Hi, everyone, and welcome to another live edition of the Ethicast, coming to you from the 16th Annual Global Ethics Summit here in Atlanta, Georgia, and streaming to you live from around the world. I'm your host, Bill Coffin, and I'm especially excited for this episode because I have with me Jag Lamba, CEO of Certa AI. Jag, you and I got to work together not long ago on a terrific webinar that Ethisphere put out, From Chaos to Control, Streamlining Third-Party Due Diligence. And we talked all about really the topic that's sort of eating the sun nowadays, which is the explosion of third-party due diligence as a topic, and more importantly, the use of artificial intelligence and Gen AI in particular as a real differentiator to making sure that organizations can kind of wrap their hands around the increasing expectations on third-party due diligence. So I'd love to throw it over to you. Why is third-party due diligence exploding so much right now, and why is AI the solution that so many organizations are turning to manage this objective?
Bill, thanks for having me again. So I want to, most of the audience may know this, but the number of third parties that a firm works with now, just the number, is usually 2 to 3 times the number of employees it has. So it's just a massive number.
Yeah.
Of course, I think all of us understand the increasing dependence on third parties for every organization. And I'm going to go back to one of the comments that was made in the earlier Ethicast, by Jeff from Baker and McKinsey.
Yeah.
He said that 90% of his investigations actually involve a third party. So it is a lot of third parties, a lot of dependence, and very high risk. Right. So that's why organizations are increasingly focusing on third parties. Now, a lot of managing third parties is about due diligence, right? And what due diligence means is collecting the right data for them and analyzing that data for risk based on your control frameworks. So that is why generative AI, that is where generative AI shines, right? It's perfect for like analyzing large amounts of data, collecting large amount of structured data, and creating business processes very easily.
Yeah. Now, in the webinar, one of the guests on that webinar was somebody who spoke very, very openly. And you had done a lot of work with them, but it was clear that they were talking about some of the effects they've already seen as they implemented AI. And there's been so much conversation about AI ideation, AI contemplation, like people getting philosophically comfortable with the notion of, all right, this is a technology we need to embrace. But I think this discipline, the ethics compliance discipline, is very swiftly moving into the notion of we have embraced it. We want to understand how to implement it and what it really looks like when we integrate this technology with our workflow. And in the webinar, I was really fascinated by, here's a story of an organization that is making actual use of it and they have real results to show. So with that in mind, my question to you is, given your unique perspective, what does excellent really look like when you're talking about an organization that has really put in the work to embed AI into their workflows, especially when it comes to third-party due diligence?
Yeah. So excellence, which is what a lot of companies are still striving towards, and haven't seen a company achieve it yet. But what the vision that we are working towards is third-party risk and compliance by exception. So what that means is the software and data and AI will work together and inform the humans, hey, there's a problem, versus the humans having to push the process, do the analysis themselves. So it's by exception is the dream, right?
Yeah.
The way companies are going about achieving it is by applying generative AI across the life cycle of third parties. So the complete life cycle, everything from program design. So we have a new regulation. How does our program need to evolve based on this regulation? How much of this regulation is already covered by our program, for example? Incredibly collecting very precise data and structured data that can be analyzed about each third party, which is, again, you've seen deep search in generative AI. It's incredible. It's awesome, right?
It really is.
And then each third party that companies analyze, we did some research and we indicated that for each third party, companies have to analyze 200 pages of content. So this is everything from analyzing risks, adverse media, and then, of course, company registration documents, privacy policies, everything.
That's a novel's worth of content.
And given the scale, you just cannot do it properly without generative AI.
Yeah.
It's just economically not feasible.
Yeah. So for organizations that are going, you know what, we understand this, we want to implement, but they don't know exactly how to start, or they're at the very beginning of that implementation journey, and they're looking for some early quick wins so they can kind of show upstairs why we're doing this, what it's doing to differentiate our program, how it's helping move the needle. What are some quick wins you would recommend organizations keep in mind as they start that implementation journey?
Yeah. So with generative AI, my main recommendation would be to use generative AI in the co-pilot mode versus the agent mode.
Right.
With co-pilot, humans are still making all the decisions. The AI, the generative AI, is actually doing some of the pre-work like a junior analyst.
Sure.
But the humans are still making all the decisions. So if you use it in the co-pilot mode, it enhances your productivity, not as much as in agentic mode.
Yeah.
But it's still a huge, great, big first step.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I mean, that's in terms of where to apply this in Copilot, I think the most obvious place is in the pre-review of due diligence documents, of due diligence content, right? It's just, it's just such an obvious place, right?
Yeah.
And with AI, and we have this working at multiple clients now, where AI will apply the client's controls framework on all the content that we collect about third parties in a risk-adjusted manner. It's possible today, it's happening today, it's real, and it can be applied pretty risk-free in a co-pilot mode.
Indeed. Now, when you and I were talking before we came on camera, we were talking about this notion of how AI can kind of provide organizations with sort of an army of junior analysts.
That's right.
All that work. One of the big challenges for ethics and compliance teams as they're trying to scale up their team or transform it to a higher level of performance is when they have to make that ask for more personnel, right, and staff, right? And of course, we're going to see a lot of talent entering this space with generative AI being table stakes for what they do. Do you have any thoughts on how ethics and compliance teams can keep an eye towards what does the future talent look like when you bring people onto your team? What should you be looking for in terms of people to join your team who are going to be able to make use of that tech from the beginning and kind of start at a higher level of ability to differentiate your program?
I love this question in so many ways. So, I think we are on the precipice of a new revolution, similar to the industrial revolution and the communication revolution and the mobile revolution. We are on the productivity and intelligence revolution, right? Now, I argue that the risks of not doing AI now are greater than the risks of actually including AI.
Yeah.
Because the two scenarios are you're doing the work by yourself, or you're doing the work with an army of junior analysts. And then just taking that to the talent, if you have two, if you will, options on who to hire, if one person comes with an army of analysts, junior analysts, and one person is an individual contributor, I mean, both are, there's only one human that you're hiring, but one comes with who would you, it's so obvious, right? You would obviously hire the person with like an army of junior analysts.
Exactly.
It's incredibly important for ethics and compliance teams to start getting comfortable with it, to start experimenting with it. And of course, you need to, follow sort of, the culture of the organization and, sort of, bring the organization along.
Of course.
But I think doing nothing is not an option.
Agreed. I've been in publishing for much of my career, and I have at my desk one of those big movable type, it's just a letter E from an old set. It's an old movable typeset. They don't use those anymore.
That's right.
It's my little reminder of we must remain flexible. We must remain in a constant evolution. I think the Gen AI situation here is really a good example of that, where the time changes now. The time changes yesterday, frankly. And there's really no resisting this because it's already changing the state of the art. So
you do not want to be a blacksmith during the Industrial Revolution.
You really don't. You really don't. So, well, Jag, where should people go to learn more about all the things we're talking about today?
So, our website is Certa AI. So Certa with the C, CERTA. And then we're doing a really great panel with Honeywell, with Dion from Honeywell, who I think is one of the most articulate, one of the most, one of the sharpest minds in compliance.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's tomorrow morning at GES.
Wonderful. Well, look, Jag, thank you very much for joining us on the Ethicast today. Really appreciate talking with you. I love talking with you about this topic. You're so passionate about it, and really appreciate you giving us some time today in the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Bill.
Indeed. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. This has been another live edition of the Ethicast, coming to you from the 16th Annual Global Ethics Summit here in Atlanta, Georgia, and virtually around the world. I'm your host, Bill Coffin. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you again next time. Bye now.